I'm gonna knock his ass out, and then you're next.
Can you tell us anything about the future of Cobra Kai?
Cobra Kai is going back into production.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special treat for you today. With me is Emmy-winning producer and actor Sean Kanan. You know him from Karate Kid 3 and Cobra Kai, and you've probably seen him in the thousands of episodes of television and various movies he's done over the years, from Bold and the Beautiful to General Hospital, and of course his recent Emmy-winning series, Studio City. Sean, it is a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Ken. It's always great to sit down and chop it up with you. See what I did there?
I did. And I know not to respond because my karate is a joke.
Oh, well, listen, there's always hope for the new year.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to be talking about personal improvement today. We're going to be talking a lot about that. And I think you've got some great advice for people, some great paths forward for people. But I did want to touch base with you about Mike Barnes and Karate Kid 3 and Cobra Kai, because obviously Mike Barnes is back in the zeitgeist. He is back. You have a lot of fans from 1989 and you have a lot of fans from right now. And I just wanted to talk to you about what that feels like now. And have you gotten used to the idea that this character from a long time ago is back?
You know, I think this entire resurgence of Karate Kid mania, springboarded by Cobra Kai, is just amazing. I think we all know that there's now going to be another Karate Kid movie with Ralph Jackie Chan. And I think it's great because it just, there's so much good philosophy and information in the original films. And it's great now that an entire new generation is discovering that. Cobra Kai is such a terrific show. I'm so honored to be a part of it. Am I used to it? I'm used to it, but before Cobra Kai, it really wasn't to the level that it is now. I mean, people would sort of nostalgically recognize me from the Karate Kid 3, but now I'm a small part in a much bigger worldwide phenomenon now, and so I travel quite a bit overseas, and it's amazing how many people, not just in the United States but throughout the world, are fans of this show and of the Karate Kid universe.
Oh, absolutely. And, one question I had from your perspective as an actor, you've performed in movies and you performed on television. What is the difference between acting in a movie like Karate Kid 3 and acting in a TV show like Cobra Kai? What's the difference in the experience?
I think the general difference in television and film is that television moves much more quickly. Take, for instance, The Bold and the Beautiful. We do a show and a half a day. So it's pretty much the norm that I'll have at least 25 pages of dialogue a day. And when you're doing a film, you might shoot 6 to 9 pages a day, which is a luxury. It's really nice to be able to take that much time to shoot a scene, but it's definitely a skill set to be able to move quickly and do, to cover a lot of pages in television. The thing I like about film is whether it's a good film or a great film or not such a great film, it's there in perpetuity. It becomes a part of the cinematic tapestry of, the pantheon of films. I mean, it's there forever. I guess you could say TV does now because of the internet. Television, I guess on some level is archived in perpetuity too. But there's something about a film because it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Television, a lot of times you're coming in and you don't know where it ends, whether it be the season of a show or the actual overarching arc of the show itself, which might go on, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I guess I like each of them for different reasons. I'm used to television because that's my steady gig is The Bold and the Beautiful, and it moves really quickly, and that keeps it very exciting and very fresh, constantly being given new storylines to play. And I could go on and tell you why I like theater. I mean, I like theater because you get to rehearse for a month, and once the curtain comes up, there's no one yelling cut. I think there's something special about each different medium.
Now, do you have a preference? Do you have a personal favorite?
That's a really tough one. You know, if I was being really honest, I would tell you that theater is my favorite medium to work in, that and stand-up comedy, because stand-up is just you and your words and a microphone, and it's go. I mean, there's no net. It's exciting. You know, you can't yell cut in the middle of a stand-up set. You know, there's always sort of a sense of excitement when you're starting a new film, generally meeting a lot of new people. They're all there for this collaborative common goal. You know, with Cobra Kai, it's so exciting because they've been doing this for years. It functions like a well-oiled machine. Everybody is so good and operating at such a high level, whether it's you know, the crew and the writers and the producers, or you know, the guys Billy and Yuji and Thomas and Ralph. And it's like you're stepping into something that everything is set up for you to be successful. So that's really great.
So, you know, speaking of being successful, you know, you have a lot of experience throughout your entire career in all aspects of the business, a very tough business. And you've decided to actually create, you have seminars, you have books, but now you have an audiobook. And we've talked about The Way of the Cobra before. And I was wondering could you give everyone kind of like an introduction to The Way of the Cobra and how it came about?
Sure. Way of the Cobra is my third book. Cobra is an acronym. It's formed from the words character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. And it's set up that I'm the sensei. You're in my dojo. The chapters are divided up into belts. And this is the philosophy and the strategy that I've used in my life to overcome some pretty significant challenges, to achieve some success in my life. And I just want to pass this on to as many people as I can. I wish somebody had given me this book when I was about 15 years old. And I always tell people, you know, before you think that I'm elevating 3 feet off the ground on some mountaintop in Kathmandu, I wrote this book because I've made every mistake a dozen times over that I talk about in the book. And if I can help people avoid some of those mistakes, and it's not about lifting someone up to the top. It's about helping them lift themselves up to the top and just pointing out some of the well-worn, you know, pitfalls and places where you can stumble. I'm really passionate about my coaching and my speaking and my writing. You know, I thought, Ken, that I got into acting early on because I love to entertain people, and you know, it seemed like a very exciting profession, and all the things that kind of a 16-year-old boy in a small town would fantasize about Hollywood. But as I've gone down the path, I realized that I got into acting because I want to inspire people. But what I've also realized is that acting is only one conduit for me to do that. You know, my writing and my speaking and my coaching are 3 other ways that allow me to do the very thing that was why I got into acting in the first place. And I absolutely love it. It feels great helping other people and seeing the changes that arise in their lives. And I guess on a somewhat selfish note, I get a lot out of it. You know, it keeps me accountable. It keeps me invested in my own process of constantly evolving and becoming more self-aware. And as you said, the Way of the Cobra audiobook just came out, I think it was like 4 days ago. Well, maybe a week ago.
Wow. Congratulations.
And it was, thank you very much. It was a great experience making the book. I read the book, and people are telling me, wow, you know, after listening to the book, I get a very different perspective from it. It's very different hearing you say the words and seeing how passionate you are. And it elevates the words off the page. I'm just glad it's done, because my wife and I decided we were going to try and produce the book ourselves. And I must have read it 2 or 3 times out loud, recording it. We just couldn't get the sound right. And we finally said, look, we've got to bring in some professionals to do this. And we did, and got done very quickly. And it's available on Audible. And, you know, the book is also now in its 3rd printing. It just came out in Italian and French, and will be coming out in Spanish soon. and it's really taken on a life of its own. And then there's the sequel to the book, which is called Welcome to the Kumite. And so if you loved Way of the Cobra, you'll love Welcome to the Kumite. And that just went up on Amazon about a week ago.
Wow. You know, I've never been a part of an audiobook production. And what was that like in terms of how long did it take to actually record all of that book?
You want to know the biggest thing about it? You wouldn't think this. It's physically draining. I mean, first of all, I was so sick of my own voice by the time I was done. But you're sitting in this room and you got the headphones on, you're seeing it up on this big screen. And it's amazing how tiring reading a book out loud can be. It probably took about maybe 20 hours to do it, which doesn't really sound like a lot because the book, the audiobook, I think is about 5.5 hours long. But you're pulling out all the ums and the breaths and mispronunciations of words, and you want it to be perfect, obviously. And then we realized as we finished the book that we still had the foreword we had to do, which was graciously written by Daryl Vidal, who, of course, Daryl Vidal from The Karate Kid,
Yes.
who is the inventor of the crane kick, and we couldn't schedule Daryl to come in, so the audio engineer read the foreword and did a terrific job, and that allowed us to kind of put the cherry on top of the sundae and finish it, and then send it to Amazon for them to do their quality control. And once it was approved, we got it up as soon as we can. But it's it's a little daunting. It's tiring being in there by yourself, reading the book and stopping and starting.
Wow. So did you gain any new insights? Like reading the book aloud, it sounds like you hadn't done that. Like obviously a lot of us write things and we don't like sit down and read them out loud, but that process of reading it out loud, did you have any kind of like self-realization from just that information from your own life?
I realized it reinforced for me that there are a lot of the parts of the book that really are good, and I was really proud of it. With the coaching that I've been doing, with having written Welcome to the Kumite, I can also see the evolution in ideas, where there's a really great idea that I talk about in the book, but I know now where it's gone from the time that I wrote the book to now, which is really great because that's kind of what I wanted to do for people who read it. I wanted to serve as a touchstone for them to evolve internally. Here's a great idea, and now I'm going to run with it and put my own spin on it. And I've put my own spin on a lot of the ideas I've come up with. And I think that there's nothing I read in it where I was like, oh God, why did I say that? I mean, I'm still very happy with it. I really am. I realized that there were things that I wish I would have gone even more in depth with, but I didn't know it then. I've learned it now because this whole process for me, as I said, I guess somewhat selfishly, I've grown tremendously as a person as a result of working with all of the people that I've had the privilege and the honor of working with. Michelle and I were talking, and for quite a while, we've decided that the third installment of the Way of the Cobra franchise is going to be a book called Cobra Couples. And it's a book we're going to be writing together. And we've already done a fairly good amount of prep work. And our goal for 2024 is that book will be out. And it's going to be how to apply a lot of the strategies and philosophy to making your relationships as good as possible. And it's not just going to be my voice, because I am certainly far from perfect. We're going to hear from the Queen Cobra herself, my wife, and talk about relationships from both perceptions of it. And I think it's going to be really valuable for people.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you've said before, just the power of a relationship to propel you in a positive direction or a negative direction.
Yeah. Ken, there's an interesting study. I can't footnote it for you, but I heard it, and they asked extremely successful individuals what the number one thing they attributed their success to. And you ask someone that and they say, oh, getting up early, that's a close second. Working hard, blah blah, it's not it. The number one thing that most high value individuals attribute their success to is the partner that they choose.
Wow.
And it's not just behind every great man is a great woman, because a lot of these individuals are women. Behind a great woman sometimes is a great man. But the choices that we make with the individual we choose as our primary partner in life has a profound effect on the trajectory of our life. You know, somebody that you can trust, who's not afraid to tell you you're wrong, somebody who's afraid to show you out of the box thinking that sometimes you're too close to something to think about, that offers a competing or even conflicting perspective that forces you to do some critical thinking, but all within the space of it being a place of love and not sort of toxic criticism. It's invaluable. And I'm so fortunate that I have that in my life. You know, to boil it down, the right one will make you, the wrong one will break you.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, so true. That's one thing about your books. And, you know, I've read both of your books. They're chock full of not only these things that obviously you've experienced and researched and you've put so eloquently into these books. It's the philosophy behind it. And you talked about the philosophy of martial arts and the philosophy of the Karate Kid movies, but you bring in a lot of just philosophy on how to approach life as well.
Yeah. You know, and I talk about this in the beginning of Welcome to the Kumite. A lot of the book is philosophy. A lot of it is strategy, and they are inextricably intertwined. You must have both to be successful. You know, it's kind of like philosophy helps us understand ourselves, other people, and the bigger questions of the world. And it's like the wisdom and training of a samurai. Okay. But that samurai also has to have the tactical ability to wield the katana. Okay. You know, understanding how to wield a katana without the mastery of the philosophy that goes behind it is like, you know, it's just wildly slashing, failing to really hit its target. So you have to have both of them, because just having philosophy is kind of, you know, it's impotent. I mean, if you must have action to support the philosophy. They work hand in hand. And, you know, one of the things that was a big leap of philosophy and strategy that I came up with from Way of the Cobra to Welcome to the Kumite is the concept that if you want results in anything, ignore them. And by that, I mean, create a bulletproof process for anything. And if you create a bulletproof process, you don't have to worry about the results. I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm sure, Ken, you and I drive a car 99.5% the same way. You unlock the car, you sit down, you put the safety belt on, you put something in the nav if you need it, you check your mirrors, you throw it in reverse, you back up, you throw it in drive, you obey the street signs, and you expect to get to your destination, right? You don't drive like, I hope I make it, right? It's because you build a bulletproof process for driving, right? You can stay out of the results. It's like that for anything, whether you're trying to lose weight, whether you're looking for a new career, a new job. If you create a process that you apply effectively and consistently, and you're constantly doing a diagnostic on it to see where it needs to be tweaked and constantly refining it, you can stay out of the results. I'll give you an example. I mean, you know, as an actor, when I audition, if I get 5% of the jobs I audition for, probably I'm doing pretty well. That means, you know, ostensibly I fail 95% of the time. Now, I don't look at those as failures. You know, I look at them as teachers. But the point is, if I only looked at my success based upon getting a job, then I would be a pretty unhappy guy most of the time. But my process is overarching, and not getting the job and preparing for the job and staying in shape and, you know, working on my acting. That's all part of the process. If I do all of that, and as I audition, whether I get the job or not, over the overarching length of time in my career, I will produce results. Okay. But you have to be able to accept the fact that you're not always going to get external, tangible results that point to success. You just have to trust the process and know that if you keep in the process, the results are going to come. I believe that.
Yeah, it's really amazing to hear you say this, because obviously I've read it, but to hear you say it, there's just that wisdom and experience. And I would think that your audiobook would be absolutely fantastic to listen to. And you brought up the car analogy, which I remember, I think it's from your second book. And you talked about how a lot of us, there's all this time we drive around. And it's kind of like this wasted time when we could be learning, we could be improving our brain, we could be listening to something. And the audiobook kind of fits into that.
Absolutely. I wish I came up with it. I think it was Tony Robbins, but he said, use your car as a mobile library. I mean, the amount of time, especially in Los Angeles, that we spend in our cars, you really can learn almost anything. So, I'm always trying to learn something when I'm in my car. I've been studying Mandarin Chinese for a couple of years now. I mean, people hate when they get in my car because, they'll start hearing, someone speaking Chinese in my car and I have to turn it off because it makes them mental. But, whatever it is, if you're a history buff, listen to something about history. If you want to learn a new language, I would suggest getting my book, Way of the Cobra, on Audible and listening to that. But listen to something, look, I get it. We all like to turn on the music and bump to that. That's great, but you don't have to do it all the time. Sometimes, especially if you're finding that you are having issues with time management and not getting enough done, and one of the things you want to do is say read. Well, you may not have time to, physically read a book, but you can listen to something on Audible in the car. And, it's funny, it sneaks up on you. After a while, you're like, I've been doing this for a while and I'm starting to really digest what I'm hearing, and I'm growing emotionally. I'm acquiring knowledge. And I think that's the key to, self-awareness is constantly forcing yourself to evolve into a better version of yourself.
And this is a good point to ask. If someone's interested in listening to the audiobook, where's the best place they can listen to it?
Grab it on Audible. Right now, that's the only place you can get it on Audible. As soon as Michelle and I have 5 free minutes, we're going to put it up in some other platforms. But right now, you can get it on Audible and you can be listening to it immediately.
Well, and I'll have links to that in the description. Check that out. Everyone, go check out the book on Audible. So this Way of the Cobra seems like a process. You're talking about doing a third book and you've done all these presentations.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that people read the book and have questions and want to sort of continue the journey? What are some other ways they can do that?
Well, they can always get in touch with me. I try to make myself very accessible. You can get a hold of me on Instagram on my DMs. It's Sean.Kanan with the blue check mark, or at Sean Kanan on Twitter. I give people my email address because I love hearing from them. So I don't try and make it difficult to find me. It's a good thing that I'm not in organized crime because I would be very easy to pick off. But it's Sean.Kanan@gmail.com. And, I'm always looking to find new coaching clients to work with, depending on my availability. And I offer seminars. And I think, hearing it from me directly in person is probably the best way to augment the knowledge that you get from the books.
And of course, many people watching right now know you as Mike Barnes from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. We've seen Mike Barnes in season 5. And based on those events, what advice would you give to that character with what he's dealing with right now, from just maybe from a Way of the Cobra perspective? But what's a good, healthy way for Mike Barnes to deal with his problems?
I think he should probably cash in that Rembrandt and then go find himself a beautiful beachfront condo, in Belize or something. I think it's interesting. I think Mike Barnes has had a real evolution. I mean, the guy has become a lot more self-aware. He has had some redemption, apologizing to Daniel, forming this unlikely friendship with Johnny and with Daniel and with Chosen. And I think that he is a guy that's on the path. He probably should lay off the pharmaceuticals and the booze a little bit, at least when driving a 50-foot limo. But I obviously kept up with his martial arts, because for a guy that, makes furniture. He held his own with Chosen, even landed a couple punches. And, I'm not saying that he saved Johnny at the end of season 5, but certainly seemed to help out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think Mike's on the right path.
Well, okay. So I have to ask you, can you tell us anything about the future of Cobra Kai? We know that they're about to start shooting season 6. Obviously it's been delayed for a while. Do you have any updates, or can you reveal any info regarding Cobra Kai season 6?
Well, look, obviously we are all so happy that the Screen Actors strike has concluded, that Cobra Kai is going back into production. It's the final season from what we've been told. Knowing the big three, to the small extent that I do, these guys are going to go out with a bang. So I'm going to guess that this is going to be bigger and better and more spectacular than all of the previous seasons combined. As far as seeing Mike Barnes, all I can say is keep the faith, and we shall see.
Man, that's fantastic. Well, Sean, thank you so much. And thanks for coming on today, giving us a little bit of your experience, but also telling us about your new audiobook. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or things you'd like to leave with the audience who might be curious about listening to this type of book?
Yeah, I think that everybody is concerned with being the best version of themselves. I think a lot of people just kind of don't know how to do it. And so they get stuck in repetitive habits, doing the same thing over and over again. And it's the definition of insanity, expecting different results. And sometimes it's just like the smallest tweak, just the tiniest way of looking at something slightly differently, applying a slightly different action to it that makes a huge difference. Look, I've made huge changes in my life, everything from losing 50 pounds to getting sober to all sorts of different things. And as with most challenges in life, the solution is generally simple, but it's rarely easy. And sometimes, you need an external force, some outside eyes, some outside experience to take what you already have inside of you, because everybody has a Cobra inside of them. Everybody has that very best version of who they're supposed to be. Sometimes, though, you just need a little bit of help letting it out. And I know that the information in my books, Way of the Cobra and Welcome to the Kumite, is absolutely transformative. And, one of the taglines from both books is transform yourself and you can transform the world. And I believe that.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about your new book. Best of luck with it. I'm excited to check it out. And everyone, if you're interested, I have links in the description, and you can go check out Sean's new Way of the Cobra audiobook.
Ken, I just want to thank you so much for everything you do for the Karate Kid Cobra Kai fandom. We love you. And I just want to thank all the fans. Man, we have the greatest fans in the world in the Karate Kid Cobra Kai universe. And I think I'll just leave you with one thought that I think is something you all really need to think about.
Okay.
Your karate's a joke.
That's great. Yes. It's eternal. I think that's eternal. It's eternal, a great,
right?
It's a great line. I love it. Sean, thank you so much. And we appreciate you and Mike Barnes. And I know all of us watching this, we're just so happy that Mike Barnes is back. So,
me too.
Yeah. Well, Sean, we look forward to see you next time, and have a great holiday season.
You too, Ken. Take care.
You too.